This week, Bleacher Report published an article about 5 blockbuster trades they could see happening ahead of the NBA season, and I'm going to explain why I think those trades should or shouldn't go through. The first one was Paxton on Lauri Markkanen, who's been a player that's had his name thrown around trade rumors since the beginning of the offseason. And this trade is centered around Markkanen, where Markkanen gets traded from the Jazz to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for Nikola Topic, Ousmane Dieng, Kendrick Williams, a 2025 first-round pick from the Jazz. So the Jazz received their first-round pick back, a first-rounder in 2027, a first-rounder in 2029, and 3 second-round draft picks. When I saw this trade, my first thought was, oh, I don't love it. If you're the Jazz, it's a great move. If you're the Thunder, I don't think it's worth it. I know the Thunder are in win now mode, and they want to go out there and try and build up this fantastic roster they have. But I think by adding Markkanen, you're bringing in a player who, yeah, he can score well. He's a top 25 player. He averages 20 points per game, 25 points per game, shoots 40% from behind the arc, 44 from the field, but he doesn't address a need. And I think this is just lunging for a player just because he's a big name guy, but it's not going to really help the team much. The way the Thunder is structured, they have Chet and Isaiah Hartenstein, who are solidified at the 4 and the 5 position. Markkanen would have to play the 3 in this scenario. And the article even specifically said Markkanen would be playing the 3. And I think that would just add too much length to the Thunder and would eliminate their flow of a team. They'd have SG at point guard, Jalen Williams shooting guard, and then 3 6'10" plus players. And I think would cause a lot of issues in terms of spacing on the court. And I know Chet and Lauri can like stretch, but they're not going to have the same mobility as a traditional guard or forward. And that's why I think this should hold off. They have all the ammunition to go and execute a trade, but this isn't the right player. There's no need to rush into it. If he's not the right player, there's no need to rush and try to acquire it. Because higher than not, there's going to be another player that hits the market at some point in the trade market where you can go out there and acquire him. It's a better fit. Now, if this trade were to go through, the Jazz would be winning big time because if they don't want Markkanen, if they don't want to pay him, if that's the scenario, they're getting a really good haul. They're getting back their 2025 first, sure, but they're receiving 2 first-round picks additionally. They're receiving 3 second-round picks, and they're also receiving a player that I really like in Nikola Topic. Nikola Topic was drafted by the Thunder this past NBA draft, pick 12, and I think he has a ton of potential. He was a very, very good player before his injury, can create a lot of ball movement, and that was something that I think the Jazz have been lacking in terms of the players they have in the backcourt. They can all go out there and score, but there's not a lot of ball movement. Colin Sexton, Keontae George are players that can attack the rim, but not necessarily move the ball. So I think Topic would be a good fit for this team. And he's also injured, right? Which sounds concerning, but there's a lot of congestion on this Jazz team. So they can have their guards play out this year, see who fits, see who doesn't, move off of them, and then they can bring in Topic and take over that spot the following year and find his role once those players show who they are at the NBA level. Ousmane Dieng was a former first-round draft pick. He could provide some upside. I don't think he's going to be an all-world player. He averaged 5 points the past 2 seasons, but there's potential there. He was a lottery pick for a reason. Overall, though, I don't like the move for the Thunder. I like it for the Jazz, though, if they were to officially say we don't want Markkanen anymore. The next trade was downright horrendous. It was centered around the Hornets and the Magic. The Magic would receive LaMelo Ball, while the Hornets would receive Anthony Black, Wendell Carter Jr., Karl-Anthony, a first-round pick this year from the Orlando Magic, and a first-round pick from the Denver Nuggets this season. And if you're the Hornets, why the heck would you do it? Why would you ever do that? LaMelo is the face of the franchise. You finally have some hope as a team. You have him, and you have Brandon Miller, who looks like he could be interesting. You just had the 6th pick in the draft. You never know what that player could turn into. You want to keep your best player on your roster, though. There's no need to constantly hit this rebuild button. And the Hornets have been doing that since even when Kemba Walker was there. They've been in these constant rebuilds, trying to find their next face of the franchise. You have it. You have LaMelo. He sells jerseys. He brings in fans, and he's an all-star. He's a great player. So I don't know why the heck you would ever do this. This would be a horrible trade. Like if you were the Hornets, don't go through with this. You get no value from it. Anthony Black, he played, 20 minutes a game last year and gave you 4 points. Karl-Anthony is a solid backup at the most. Wendell Carter Jr. is not all that exciting. Gives you 10 and 6 a year, and you already have Mark Williams on your roster. You get a first rounder from the Magic and the Nuggets, but those are both going to be terrible picks to get because they're going to be late first. This is a terrible trade. Like, don't do this with the Hornets. You finally have someone that people like on your roster. Keep them around. You actually have somebody on your roster that has potential to be great and is great. Keep him around. If you're the Magic, A+ move if this were to some reason go through, because you would have a baby big three, LaMelo, Franz, and Paolo, and I think they'd be contending to be one of the better teams in the East. The third trade that was reported was between the Toronto Raptors and the New Orleans Pelicans. The Raptors received Brandon Ingram, Jordan Hawkins, Matt Ryan. The Pelicans would receive Jakob Poeltl, Bruce Brown, and a first-round pick in 2026 from the Indiana Pacers. And I don't hate this move for either sides. If you're the Pelicans and you don't want to pay Brandon Ingram, you just can't afford him because you have DeJounte, you have Zion, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones are getting some contracts, then by all means, make the move, right? If you just can't afford it, I understand moving off of Brandon Ingram. You bring in Jakob Poeltl, who I don't think is a game wrecker at center, but if you don't have belief that Yves Missi, your first round pick, can be a starter right now, then I would say go out there and get Jakob because he's a solid player. You can get a double-double out of him every game, and he plays very effectively. And he can replace Jonas Valanciunas, and he's also a good defensive player. Bruce Brown is also a great role player that can blend in on any type of roster. He was a huge X factor in the Nuggets championship. He was really solid on the Raptors. He's a great overall player, and he can slot anywhere. So if you can't afford Brandon Ingram, this is a great trade. If you're the Raptors, you only go through with this trade if you actually think Emmanuel Quickley and Scotty Barnes can be a 1-2 punch. Because at the best, Brandon Ingram is a third best player in a championship level team. He's right around Michael Porter Jr. range. I don't think he has much more room for growth. He's a great scorer, but I don't think he has that next step yet because I truly think we would already have seen it if there was that next step for him to take. But if you don't think Quickley or Barnes are going to be the next 1-2 punch, right, where Barnes is going to be like a superstar, Quickley your awesome star, then you're just going to be choked by the salary cap and mediocrity. You're going to have two players that are max, a third player very close to max. Brandon Ingram probably going to command $50 million per year after this trade goes through. So if you don't have faith in Barnes and Quickley becoming the 1-2, then don't do it. But if you have just like you're just feeling that they are the next big thing, then get Brandon Ingram because he will help add more scoring and add more length to this roster, which I think is extremely important to have. So it's really just evaluate your team for the Raptors. I don't think that Quickley and Barnes are the next big 1-2, but if they believe it, go for it. The fourth trade that was written out might be the worst one. It's a 3-team trade between the Clippers, the Timberwolves, and the Brooklyn Nets. The Minnesota Timberwolves would trade Karl-Anthony Towns, and they would receive Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Terrence Mann, and a second-round pick. The Clippers would receive Cat. The Nets would receive Norm Powell, Kobe Brown, Bones Highland, PJ Tucker, a 2031 first and second round pick from the Clippers. I'm not going to even bother explaining too much about how this relates to the Nets and the Clippers, other than if you're the Clippers, you hit the gold mine with Cat, you get a star, and your roster could be a good contending roster if everyone's healthy. If you're the Nets, you move off of a bad contract in Cam Johnson. You trade Dorian Finney-Smith finally. You bring in a first-round pick in 2031 from the Clippers that can actually be pretty decent. You bring in Norm Powell, who can actually get you a first-round pick himself because he's a really, really underrated, talented player. But this trade should never go through because the Minnesota Timberwolves would be downright just insane to make this trade. The way their roster is built is perfect. They were a top 3 seed for a reason. They were a contending team for a reason. They were firing on all cylinders for a reason. It's because their roster was perfectly constructed. You had scoring and shooting out of players like Naz Reid. You had players like Kyle Anderson there, Mike Conley there, right? You had your superstar in your Ant. You had your star in Cat. You have a game record defender in Rudy Gobert. Yes, you end up losing one of those players in Kyle Anderson, but then you bring in Rob Dillingham, who's going to help provide a spark of the bench now. So there's no fall off on their bench rotation. Their team is young, right? Their best player is young, so they're going to obviously take a step up in terms of production. So why would you move off of this roster? And especially why would you move off of a superstar player in Cat, at the minimum a star in Cat, to bring in Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Terrence Mann? You don't need that rotation. Terrence Mann's not going to crack any minutes because you have Ant, Dillingham, and Conley. Like, he's going to crack some, but what's the point? You don't need him. Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, they can shoot the ball well, but you already have shooters. You already have scoring all around on your roster. You don't need those players. And to continue, you need a star. You need an offensive powerhouse scoring wise aside from Ant. And Cat is that guy. Cat gets a lot of hate, but he's one of the best centers in the league easily. So I don't know why he would make this trade. And the thing that was laughable was part of the justification that people have been saying is, oh, they can free up financial abilities. You're in a championship window. Go and if there's a third apron or a fourth apron, sink into it because if you're only going to get a window so very often. So spend the money. Who cares about saving money? Like, you think at the end of the day, you're going to rather want to win a championship or say, hey, well, we saved $30 million. I think you're going to want to say we won a championship. I don't know why this trade would happen. The last trade proposed was between the Houston Rockets and the New York Knicks. The Houston Rockets would receive Julius Randle, while the New York Knicks would receive Jabari Smith Jr., Giles Landale, Jeff Green, and a 2027 first-round pick that's top 5 protected from Houston. Honestly, when I saw this, I thought, interesting, but good. I personally like Randle. I think Randle could fit on the Knicks. But if you're the Knicks and you don't think Randle is going to fit, if you don't think you can afford him, this is an A+ move. If you're the Rockets and you can get Randle, an A+ move. And I'll start off with why I like this for the Knicks. Like I said, if they say we can't afford him, we think he's going to cause a lot of congestion on offense, and you just don't see a fit, okay, that's fine. You bring in Jabari Smith, who I think is a huge player to bring in. I know Jock Landale's in there, and he can be a backup. You get a first-round pick back. Not a big deal. I don't think they are really going to care about getting a first. They might, but that's not really the big package, in my opinion. The main reason why you make this trade is because you get Jabari Smith in the package. Jabari Smith was a first-round pick, top 3 pick a couple of years ago. He's uber talented. He averaged 14-8 last year, and he's obviously hasn't lived up to the hype yet, right? He hasn't been Paolo Banchero in that draft class, but he's been a really solid player. And I think if you're the Knicks and you can bring somebody in who's doesn't have to necessarily be in the pressure of having to be the first or second or even the third best player on your roster, but have all the talent to be a first, second, third best player on the roster, I think it's going to allow for Jabari to elevate himself even more because he's not going to have all the pressure to carry the team, but he's going to be able to be given opportunities to compete and have production still. He's also not going to have a lot of intention on him, right? He's not going to be the guy you game plan to stop, allowing for him to take a bigger step up, I think, on this team and in terms of progression. You also have him on a cheap contract. He's a young player. And if you want to look into the future, Brunson, Mikal, Josh Hart, you name everybody in the Knicks, OG, they're all in their prime right now. They're all young. They're going to be young 2 years from now, right? But at some point, maybe their production, you could say, might hit a point where not falls off, but instead of playing 82 games a year, they start playing 65 games a year, right? And you need somebody that can come in and fill that gap and help you win some games. Jabari Smith is young. He's going to be entering his prime. And if he can progress well and grow well, I think he's going to help this team currently because he can still score the ball well. He can play, he can crash the boards well. He can stretch the floor pretty decently. But as you look into the future, Jabari Smith is going to progress even more and have another big role in this roster, get a bigger and bigger role because he's going to progress. Will these guys take some time off, allowing for them to still compete, even in a random regular season game where Brunson might just say, hey, I need to take a game off, which is more than okay to do. So I like this move because it helps you currently and it helps you in the future.